Good morning. We're going to call the May 12th, 2025 regular council meeting to order. We don't have anybody registered for the open microphone and looking for approval of the agenda. Councillor Blatz. Anything to add? Sue?
Sorry, through the chair, it might just be my agenda is old, but I don't see the public hearing on here. I think you were emailed the information.
I have the public hearing.
Is it on yours?
7.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
Dean.
on 7. Sorry, it usually comes first, so.
Under closed session number 14, add personnel under section 17.
Okay, that'll be 14.4. Approve the agenda as amended. Those in favor? Were you adding something, Councilor Brown? Okay.
Yeah, that's very good music.
Adoption of the minutes. 4.1, regular and special meeting minutes from April 28th.
I move that council adopts the regular council meeting minutes from April 28, 2025 as presented.
Moved by Councilor Blatz. Any errors or omissions? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that council adopts the special council meeting minutes from April 28, 2025 as presented.
Moved by Councilor Blatz. Any errors or omissions? Those in favor? Carried. Item 7. Sorry, go ahead.
Going back to consent agenda, I'm looking for some clarification. There's nothing listed under consent agenda. However, under committee of the whole, there's a report that supposedly comes from consent agenda.
We're not passing a consent agenda. Anything under committee of the whole will be presented. Yep. So if it's going to be under consent agenda, then it has to be approved under that consent agenda. If we haven't approved something, go ahead, Jacqueline.
Through the chair to council, there are a couple items on consent agenda this meeting. There's 9.1 and then also 13.1 as well.
So are we not listing them under the consent agenda?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat that?
Are we not listing them under the consent agenda?
If they aren't listed, that is an administrative mistake,
Okay.
but they should be.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, go ahead.
Do we need to lift that?
Sure, yeah. No. No, they're not listed in the consent agenda. We're not approving a consent agenda. They'll appear as they do in the agenda. Public hearing for bylaw 2090-25, amending the business license bylaw 2091-25, amending the fees and charges bylaw. So I'll declare the public hearing for bylaws 2090-25 and 2091-25 opens at 09:04. So I'll be asking planning and development to explain the purpose of the hearing.
The purpose of this hearing is to receive public input on bylaw 2090-25, amending business license bylaw 1507-01, and bylaw 2091-25, amending fees and charges bylaw 2073-24 to create an event vendor's license and define an associated fee.
Has notice of the hearing been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation and bylaws of the City of Wetaskiwin?
Yes, the public hearing was advertised on the city website and whatifwetaskiwin.ca as of April 28th, as per the requirement from the Municipal Government Act, Section 606, and the city's advertising bylaw. In addition, it was advertised in the Pipestone Flyer on May 1st and May 8th.
I'll now request that Planning and Development provide the report regarding this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administration is recommending that the business license bylaw be amended to create an event vendor's license that will allow an event organizer to obtain a single business license for all participating retail vendors, with the intent of simplifying the process of organizing an event. Administration is also recommending that the fees and charges bylaw be amended to include a fee for this license type.
Have we received any written submissions?
Administration has not received any written submissions.
I'll now call upon anyone who wishes to speak directly to council on this matter. Please note that all speakers will be given no more than 5 minutes to speak. Is there anyone online, Jessica? Okay. Second call, is there anyone willing to speak to this matter? And third and final, anyone presenting, or anyone present wishing to speak to this matter? Council will discuss and debate this matter later in the meeting. I declare the public hearing closed at 09:06. Thank you. Item 9.1, quarterly finance report as of March 2025. Just make sure the mic's on, please.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. Okay. I'm here to provide the Q1 2025 financial report. This report aims to provide a comprehensive overview of the city's financials and key highlights of Q1, which is from January 1st to March 31st, 2025. All the reports that have been attached have been updated for in-year council motion up to the March 27th council meeting, and for actual transactions up to March 31st, 2025. So as an overview, right now we're sitting at a deficit, but that is because the property tax for 2025 hasn't been levied yet, and it will be levied this month in May 2025. And when that comes in, you'll see that our revenue will have a major boost. So that you'll see that in Q2 2025. Also, majority of our operating grants are expected to be received in Q3 and Q4. So that's another reason why our revenue right now is so low. On the expense side, as of March 2025, the city hasn't received the Q1 RCMP invoice yet, but all the budgeted reserve transfer has been recorded, except for the interest earned on reserve balances, which we wouldn't know until the end of the year. In terms of investment, so the city investment had a market value of about $10 million as of March 31st. This is composed of $4 million related to the sanitary landfill, $9 million held with CIBC as like a general investment, and $4 million sitting with Scotiabank, which is a guaranteed investment certificate, so GIC. And this amount is the market value of the investment, which is subject to market fluctuation. However, majority of the city's investment is in fixed income fund with guaranteed principles. And this is because it meets the requirement of the MGA and also to protect the city's investment from market forces. The city's operating bank account earns interest at a Bank of Canada rate minus 1.6. The Bank of Canada rate has dropped significantly since Q4 2024, from 3.25 now to 2.75. This has impacted the interest rate that we will be earning on our bank accounts. And in order to, in anticipation of the decreasing interest rate, the city has invested an additional $3 million in January 2025 that will be earning a higher interest rate. Total interest earned on investment and bank account as of March 31st was $255,000. Investment revenue has been built into the city's budget, and the portion related to reserve will be calculated at year end. In terms of grants, so right now we have $8 million that is the reoccurring, so that's your MSI, CCBF, your LGFF, so basically your big capital grants. $3 million of approved and has been received. And there was one grant for $180,000, which we did receive, but we refused to accept it. And the details on those grants can be found in Appendix 2. In terms of the reserves, the city currently has a reserve balance of $24 million. Of this balance, $5 million has been previously committed toward existing projects, and $18 million is currently uncommitted. Reserve balances have been increased for 2025 budgeted transfers, and you can see the details in Appendix 3. So as of March 31st, 2025, the city is on course. There's really nothing to suggest anything big shakeups, and we will be following the 2025 operating budget. Thank you.
I move that City Council accepts the 2025 first quarter financial report for the period ending March 31st, 2025 as information.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Nine point two, volunteer management policy draft.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Zanette Frost, and I'm the manager of the Recreation Services Department. Over the last year, we have created a number of potential volunteer opportunities, and in doing so, feel that it is appropriate that we develop a volunteer management policy. Under this policy, we would have guidelines that follow for recruitment, retainment, reporting, and recognition. And those are the 4 key elements of any solid volunteer management program. And there would be very little impact to us in terms of liability. It actually improves our potential for that, as well as it mitigates other risks, and WCB is not impacted by this. Happy to answer any questions and take any feedback on the policy itself.
Councillor Blatz.
I move the administration incorporate council's recommendations and feedback into draft volunteer program policy and bring it back to council before the end of Q2 2025.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair, Zanette, you identified that administration has identified many volunteer opportunities. Could you cite some of those?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, yes, the Arts and Culture Advisory Board, the Recreation Board, and Cultivating Our Community are the top 3 that come to mind right now.
Anything further? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Zanette. Zanette, does this cover hockey and soccer and all of those other aspects of our community where we have volunteer coaches and managers and things?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, no, unfortunately it does not. Those organizations have their own volunteer policies that we do not have any oversight on.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 12.1, Bylaw 2090-25, amending business license bylaw 1507-01 and bylaw 2091-25, amending fees and charges bylaw 2073-24.
Good morning, Council. At the April 28th, 2025 regular council meeting, council gave first reading to bylaw 2090-25, amending the business license bylaw, and bylaw 2091-25, amending the fees and charges bylaw. A public hearing for these bylaws took place earlier in this meeting. These amendments create an event vendor's license that will allow an event organizer to obtain one business license covering all retail vendors, with the intent of simplifying the process of organizing an event. They are part of the overall updates to the special events policy and procedure to streamline the public event approval process. These amendments are now being presented for second and third reading, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about them.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. I move that City Council give second reading to bylaw 2090-25, being the amendment to the business license bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair, I've got the right, okay. This indicates, in general, item 1.7, that section 6D be amended to read, no licenses required by a mobile retail vendor as part of the activities of a booth market or an event, provided the event organizer holds a business license. It goes on to say, however, any mobile food vendor operating as part of a booth market or event must obtain an individual business license. So I'd like to get some clarity, because it seems to me one statement contradicts the other.
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the full text of the amendment should read, for greater clarity, any mobile food vendor operating as part of a booth market or an event must obtain an individual business license to ensure fire inspection requirements are met. And so through the discussion that we had with the various departments involved, we determined that we would still maintain that separate license requirement for food vendors and food trucks only, just because they often have equipment that will require greater fire inspection needs.
So you're separating the food vendor away from the mobile vendor?
From retail vendor, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And on number 1.8, it says that section 6H be amended. And when I go to the old bylaw 1507, I can't find a 6H.
Just bear with me one moment while I check through my
Sure.
notes. Okay, through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, the original provision in our business license bylaw 6H reads, all mobile food vendors / mobile vendors shall get a business license. An exception shall apply if the vendor is a charitable or nonprofit vendor. This is just amending that provision to match a subsequent amendment to our business license bylaw that doesn't differentiate, or that has different terminology for mobile food vendors / mobile vendors. Our previous amendment to the bylaw has mobile food vendor and mobile retail vendor, and then mobile vendor as the whole category, and that language wasn't clear in the existing version online.
So does that mean that bylaw 1507-01 has been amended previously?
To change the language regarding mobile retail vendors and mobile food vendors, yes, but it hasn't been consolidated into one bylaw online. So we're fixing that terminology.
Okay, so the old bylaw I'm looking at, in fact, does not have a 6H, but the amendment does. Is that what you're saying? When I look at bylaw 1507-01, which is the bylaw we're amending, and this says we're going to be amending section 6H, and I'm saying I can't find.
Sorry, I can answer this one through the chair to Councillor Nielsen. If you click on the link in the RFD, it does take you to the bylaw that has a 6H in it, and it is the one that we also can find online.
So it had been amended to add a 6H, is what you're saying?
It's in the existing one.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that City Council give third reading to bylaw 2090-25, being the amendment to the business license bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried.
Do I not need to do two?
Yep.
I move that City Council give second reading to bylaw 2091-25, being the amendment to the fees and charges bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried.
And I move that City Council give third reading to bylaw 2091-25, being the amendment to the fees and charges bylaw.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Item 12.2, amending bylaw 2085-25.
Good morning, City Council. Administration is presenting an omnibus amending bylaw. Today, this bylaw does amend multiple bylaws, which contain minor errors that must be cleaned up to ensure legislative accuracy and excellence. And I'm going to pass off the mic to Jess to provide further detail on this amending bylaw.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. Through regular administrative review and management of bylaw records, administration identified errors that require correction. Administration has prepared the Omnibus Amending Bylaw 2085-25 to make these corrections. The bylaws amended by the Omnibus Amending Bylaw include amending Bylaw 2051-24 to amend fees and charges in Bylaw 2048-23. This bylaw was intended to amend Bylaw 2047-23, fees and charges. However, it was written as 2048-23, land use bylaw amendment. At the November 14th, 2024 regular council meeting, council passed the 2025 fees and charges bylaw 2073-24, which repealed bylaw 2047-23 and all of its amendments. Passing the omnibus bylaw fixes the error by repealing 2051-24, thereby allowing administration to correct our official records. Bylaw number 2057-24, Clean Energy Improvement Program. The Clean Energy Improvement Program tax bylaw was passed on March 11th, 2024 as bylaw 2057-24 due to administrative error. The numbering 2057-24 was issued for two different bylaws and is currently recognized as the fire bylaw. The omnibus bylaw will correct the numbering for the Clean Energy Improvement Program tax bylaw to bylaw number 2062-24. The Community Standards bylaw was passed on April 24th, 2024 as bylaw 2029-23. Due to administrative error, the numbering 2029-23 was issued for two different bylaws and is recognized as an amendment to the land use bylaw. The omnibus bylaw will correct the numbering for the community standards bylaw to 2069-24. And the water and wastewater bylaw number 2081-24 passed on January 13th, 2025 in section 24.1 repeal the bylaw that was previously already repealed. This should have repealed bylaw 2045-23, water and wastewater bylaw. Administration is asking to have bylaw 2045-23 repealed in order to maintain accurate governance and update the master bylaw index appropriately. Legislative Services is currently reviewing the processes for bylaw drafting, processing, and record keeping to work towards eliminating these types of errors going forward. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Aberle.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. I move that council approve first reading of amending bylaw 2085-25.
Moved by Councillor Aberle. Those in favor? Carried.
I move that council approve second reading of amending bylaw 2085-25.
Moved by Councillor Aberle. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that council give unanimous consent to move to third and final reading of amending bylaw 2085-25.
Moved by Councillor Aberle, looking for unanimous consent. Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
And I move that council approve third and final reading of amending bylaw 2085-25.
Moved by Councillor Aberle. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Item 12.3, amendment bylaw 2092-25 to the Community Standards Bylaw. Good morning.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. Matt Nicholas, Manager of Enforcement Services. Bringing to you guys this bylaw for first reading. It's bylaw amendment bylaw for the Community Standards 2069-24. The bylaw was passed early last year. However, in discussions with some RFDs, we're looking at changing two definitions of the bylaw. The first one is under bylaw 20969-24, section 14.1, sub B, sub 6, for the definition of a nuisance property in relation to grass and weeds. So the current bylaw reads grass or weeds higher than 20 centimeters is considered nuisance. The proposed change is to define it as in respect of property means any property or part of which shows signs of lack of general maintenance and upkeep by the excessive accumulation of grass or weeds relative to other properties that could reasonably be considered in the neighborhood. So this would allow us to not have to wait for that 20 centimeter threshold. It will be defined as what's relative to the neighboring properties, and allow the bylaw officers to potentially deal with derelict or abandoned properties quicker if the neighborhood has a decent standard of grass cutting and maintenance. The second definition that we're looking at changing is the definition of loitering. So currently in the same bylaw, section 2.1 sub Q defines loitering as means to linger aimlessly in or about a place, or remain in a place for no obvious reason. So that will be the new definition that we're looking for. The current one, is a person shall not loiter in a public place as to obstruct or harass another person. So currently people anywhere can loiter in a public place. They have to do something like harass or obstruct or commit a bylaw offense or some sort of provincial offense before we can enforce on them. I looked at the bylaw definition provincially, and that's the one I changed it to. So we took out the obstruct or harass and just put it to aimlessly remain in a place with no reason. Once again, this will allow us then, the officers, to be lawfully placed in approaching people on the street that are just there for no apparent reason. They can identify themselves, ask the people, why are they there, what's going on, and then they have to give an appropriate reason why they're there. So it just once again allows the officers to be lawfully placed if people are just standing around, streets or public places with no reason to be there. And so these are just two definition changes, so none of the sub-charge sections are changed in the Community Standards Bylaw.
Councillor Aberle.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor Gandam. I move that council gives first reading of bylaw 2092-25 to amend Community Standards Bylaw 2069-24. And I do have just a general question.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Matt. I understand the reasoning. By what means can this refrain from being purely subjective? And by that I mean, I'm going to use grass as an example. So if everybody in my neighborhood, except for me, decided, because I have the perfect yard, and I'm joking, everybody decided to have their grass 3 feet tall, then they're all being by community, like the rest of the neighborhood has grass that's 3 foot tall.
Yeah,
And that could happen if everyone in the city gets on the same page and does the same thing. I'd be very impressed. But it could. We discussed this last year, and there was options to change the centimeter height.
Yeah.
And the RFD was determined to go with the community standard. Once again, the bylaw is a community standards bylaw, so we were trying to set a precedence in the area. And different neighborhoods, if you look at annex properties, properties that are being developed, we're holding them to the same standard. We have even some agricultural properties, and then we have community properties. So it is difficult sometimes to have an exact centimeter limit, and I think most people don't take a tape measure out when they go to mow the lawn and measure 20 centimeters every day to see when they cut a lawn. I think most people are reasonable and understand that, you know, if you have a weekend off and your grass is a bit high, it's time to mow the lawn in that aspect. So we're trusting people, I guess, more.
So the standard being set, and this is just an example, the standard being set is maintain your yard like everybody else's.
Within the community, yeah, in your neighborhood to the same standard.
And then again, with the loitering definition, it's not that I 100% disagree with it, but I do have concerns about if there is not something that is more concrete, that we could fall into a problem of being told that we're the ones harassing.
It can be. This is why I went with the provincial definition. What we're trying to do is have our officers lawfully placed, right, to ask the question. So if people are aimlessly about and the officers stop and ask them why, it's a simple reason. As long as they have a purpose, they'll be fine. It just gives the officers authority to stop and identify themselves and ask what's going on.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Matt. I share some of the same concerns as Councillor Aberley does in relation to the nuisance definition. But I'm curious, I guess I'm more curious about how this will be enforced. Is it based on complaints? I complain about my neighbor and then somebody comes out and look at it? Or is it based on officers driving down the street and saying, "Ooh, that's a pretty unsightly property, I think I'm going to stop and have a conversation"?
Chair to the councillor, the priority will always be complaints first, and then the second priority would be proactive patrols. So it could be both ways.
Okay. And then in the event my neighbor complains about my yard, and it's determined that it does not meet the neighborhood standard, what are you asking of me, or what are you directing me to do?
We would direct you to most likely cut your lawn.
And if I don't?
Then it would be the same as if you go over 20 centimeters, as is today. It would be a MGA order.
And what would be the time expectation from the time an officer asks a resident to tidy up their property until it's expected to be addressed?
That varies. It's circumstantial. Sometimes the officer is there on a Thursday, Friday, and the person will mow it that weekend. Sometimes the officer will give a week. It just depends on, like, they'll contact the property owner, talk to them about being reasonable, and seeing what time they can get it done. If a property is not complied with, then the EMGers have timelines of 21 days if it's a mail notice, if the property owner doesn't live in the province, or 14 days notice.
So if I choose not to comply, I have anywhere from 14 to 21 days to lean on my mower and not take action.
Correct. Yeah, that's an MGA. That's as it is today as well.
Are there any guarantees? No, that's not. Sure. Are there any guarantees that this bylaw is there any risk that this bylaw could change negatively the appearance of a neighborhood? So one nuisance property becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4. Now that's the standard for the neighborhood.
I could see that if we didn't enforce it actively, then you would. But currently we do track like vacant properties and nuisance properties, like abandoned properties. So the purpose of this and the RFD previously from last year was to get the officers to look at properties prior to 20 centimeters. Because once again, if we wait till 20 centimeters and then we give the MJ order, which is another 14, 21 days, the grass was getting quite long. And we were getting complaints from the general neighborhood and property owners. So this will allow us to go into the properties prior to that 20 centimeters if the other properties are well cut and maintained, and activate those notices in a quicker response time.
You're also getting complaints from council too of unsightly properties that aren't being managed. And so if it's waiting until it's 20 centimeters and now we're waiting another 2 or 3 weeks, it becomes that much more of a problem. And council might not have the information leading into that, knowing that that property had been addressed, but it continues to grow. So if we're able to get to it a little bit quicker, I think that that alleviates some of the problems that we've been seeing.
Mayor, yes, that's correct, Mayor, and I believe we discussed that last time this was brought forward.
Yep.
Thank you. And my next question then moves on to the issue of loitering. And again, I guess I'm trying to understand the authority under which you would approach people loitering. Under what authority, sounds corny maybe, can you tell them to move on?
Currently it's in our community standards bylaw, so it affects any open space or any like public city space that we could do that with. Currently they have to, as I said, obstruct or harass someone first. So if they're just there, say outside City Hall here, just standing around, there's no real authority right now unless they do something illegal or against the bylaw.
But in the event that this passes and then a store owner on Main Street or elsewhere in our community reports they've got 8 people hanging around the front door of their business, you shared with us that you would be asking them what their purpose is in that space. And if the purpose is I'm simply enjoying the sunshine in front of this business, do you have the authority to say, enjoy the sunshine somewhere else, you must move on?
Yeah, so for private properties, it falls under trespassing. So as soon as the owner doesn't want them on a private property, they can be removed, regardless of purpose, based on what the owner of the property wants. This bylaw is for open space, public property. And so if we do change the bylaw, yes, we could ask them to move along. Or if they are currently harassing or obstructing people, we could currently ask them to move along.
And if they choose not to be compliant?
Then they would get a charge under the bylaw.
But could then remain?
Potentially, if they're, we would resolve the concern. So right now, if they're obstructing someone, we would resolve that obstruction.
Thank you.
Councilor Bronco? Turn your mic on.
Does this bylaw or the grass nuisance, that come into play to city property, owned property?
It would come into play against all properties. For any city properties, we have an internal system to report any long grass or nuisance.
What I'm asking is, if you go by the lake park, the grass is bigger than 200, so are we going to be maintaining that when it hits 20 centimeters? Grass cutting on in the park, 20 centimeters, and all the ditches around the city of Wetaskiwin, 20 centimeters, because we don't have enough staff to keep cutting and maintaining our own property. So is it designated as natural site or where grass can grow wherever we want it? Because some of our ditches have grass bigger than 20 centimeters?
Matt, I can speak to this one. Through the chair to Councillor Bronco, we had presented and will be bringing that back through the levels of service. So we presented a grass cutting map to council a couple of years ago, and we've identified which ones get cut once a week, every 10 days, every 2 weeks. Typically the ditches are, once a year we'll come by with the swather, only to a certain level, and then we do have some natural areas that were even approved by council. So there's different standards depending on where it is, and By the Lake Park has, I don't think, ever been 20 centimeters since I've been here. That park, I believe, gets cut once a week. So we'll be having that discussion about city property grass when we bring back those levels of service.
So how can we set two standards, one for the public and one for city? If we're going to implement one standard, let's do it for everybody. But you just said maybe the park gets cut or the ditches get cut once a year, so why can't the guy who cuts his grass do it once a year?
I think if they have a ditch, they could.
Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, through to Matt. Matt, when you talk about grass and weeds, what about debris on property as well? People have got piles of cement or those kinds of things. Does that get included with this? Or is that under a separate bylaw?
No, that is under definition in the bylaw. Accumulation of building materials and stuff is already in the community standards bylaw.
Okay. A number of years ago, we had an individual who grew wild grasses, and their whole yard was wild grasses, and it was defined as wild grasses, and they were given permission to have their wild grass yard. I don't know how that fits into the standard, but I mean, it looked quite attractive, but it was planted intentionally to be wild grasses, and they were 4 feet high, some of them. So that would just be like a special case or something?
Chair to the council, yeah, I believe that would have to be an exemption of some sort or something like that.
Okay. And what about habitual abusers, to use that word? We have some who never cut their grass in the summertime, and I just wondered about that. Are we proactive with those people? I mean, we know that a certain property they're not going to cut. And even when you give them the 21-day warning, sometimes we have to send in our own staff or contract somebody to do it. I just wondered, is there anything proactive being done with those habitual offenders?
Yeah, Chair through the council, this is the purpose of changing the 20 centimeter standard to a more broad definition. We do track those properties. We do have a mapping system with those on. Currently, we have to wait until they're at 20 centimeters, even though we might have a historical, enforcement on that property, because the 20 centimeters is the current standard. So this would allow us, once again, if that property, as we know, is not being maintained like the rest of the block, we can maybe send a notice when it's at 17 or 18 centimeters, right?
Okay. And the last thing, geez, I don't know what happens to my voice in here. Me too. The last thing is about loitering. So if I'm sitting on a bench, enjoying the sunshine, and I'm old and I need to have a rest, and so I'm just sitting there, am I loitering?
Potentially. It all depends on what the purpose is. If your purpose is to sit in the park and enjoy the sun and read a book, no, you have a purpose. This definition will allow the officers to come by and say, I'm Officer so-and-so, like, what's your purpose here? And if you have an answer, you're fine.
So if I just say I'm just enjoying the sunshine, getting a tan?
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bronco.
Thank you again, Chair to Matt.
You want to turn your mic on?
So I own a house and my grass is really bad and I want to get rid of everything. And I decide to plant some potatoes. Is that allowed?
Chair to the Councillor, this bylaw definition is specific to grass and weeds. As for agricultural purposes, I'm not entirely sure.
So if somebody wanted to plant the grass and weeds, wanted to plant potatoes in their front yard and the potatoes grow higher than 20 centimeters, we would tell them to remove or?
Chair to the Councillor, not according to this bylaw, no. Like I said, this is specific to grass and weeds. So anything with a garden or something like that, I'd have to look at the land use bylaw. If you're allowed to have a garden in your property under land use bylaw, you should be fine.
But there are some grass seeds that we can buy at bedding plants or stuff that are grass that grow higher. So what are you going to do with those that actually people go buy in pots? I know my wife has it. If you got a little water or something, and those grass, wild grass, grow more than, are we? So I like the idea, but it's too specific and not enough specific, if you know what I mean.
He's talking about an overall property, not just one pot of tall grass.
No, but there are people that have a whole bunch of, if they have big weeds and flowers, they put that in there and they grow it. Like, just to say, we planted grass in our city, Main Street, that grew to 2 feet.
Yeah, Chair, through the Council, there's always officer discretion, and there's always case-by-case basis. So this is part of the reason why the officers go to the property owner, explain the issue, and talk with the property owner and see what's going on, right? If it's ornamental, flower pots or gardening stuff, it's not the intent of this bylaw. The intent of this bylaw is for your main, like, lawn and grass on your property.
Is your mic on?
Sorry, is it on? Sorry, I'm just speaking on the side. Sorry.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair, just for clarification, it will no longer be the 20 centimeters. It will now be community standard. So you keep bringing it up to the 20 centimeters, but that's would, in theory, once this is passed, would be gone. It would be this whatever the local community standard would be, as opposed to 20 centimeters for grass and.
As council directed administration to bring back so that we could have earlier intervention of unsightly properties.
Yep.
How are CPO's engagement with people tracked? So it was probably a year and a half ago, we had talked to Sergeant Yeager about their interactions with staff, and they were tracking how many times they had met with or been in the vicinity of people, and I'd asked if they were getting out and actually engaging with them. So aside from it being loitering, how are CPOs tracking their time in terms of their engagement with anybody in the community, whether they're loitering or not?
Yeah, through the mayor, on our current reporting system, it tracks what we call daily events. So we have a variety of types, whether it's school patrol, whether it's park patrol, public engagements, stuff like that, and they track all interactions. If they have the person's name, they'll track that. So we can even look at how many times we've interacted with a single individual. The RCMP do something very similar in their system, and we can request a cross-reference if we need to as well.
Perfect. And so it had been mentioned earlier, excuse me, about city properties, and that would be another priority of mine as well, is that city properties are being kept to the same community standard. And so not by complaint basis, but being more proactive, not only with our community, but with our city properties as well. More of a request than, yeah. Anything further? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Oh, yeah.
Item 12.4, Memorial Cemetery Bylaw 2082-24.
Good morning, Council. Council approved the first reading of the Memorial Cemetery Bylaw 2082-24 at the January 13th, 2025 regular council meeting. Members of council and administration then had discussion with the County of Wetaskiwin in an intermunicipal committee meeting where the fee changes were accepted and approved. The purpose of this report is to request second and third reading of the Memorial Cemetery Bylaw revision of Schedule B to match Bylaw 2073-24, the fees and charges bylaw.
Councillor Blatz.
I move that City Council gives second reading to the Memorial Cemetery Bylaw 2082-24 as presented.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried.
I move that City Council gives third reading to the Memorial Cemetery Bylaw 2082-24 as presented.
Moved by Councillor Blatz. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 13.1, correspondence, FIR update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administration was asked by council to present information about the spray park, and we did provide that information. We recently, via email and then through this RFD, we did recently meet with the spray park committee last week and went through all of the plans and the schedule for this year, identified responsibilities from the city versus the volunteer group and what they were managing, and we presented that in the FIR, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. I move that City Council accept the report as information.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Looking for a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Councillor Billingsley. Those in favor? Thank you. Thank you. Looking for a motion to come out of closed session. Councillor Billingsley, those in favor? Carried. New business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have one motion coming out of closed session to pick an artist for the mural, and I think Jess is just pulling it up on the screen right now. Would you like us to speak to the concepts?
Please. Yep.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are proposing a mural to be placed on Co-op Place, and 2 artists were brought forward, and we are recommending the artist that has been selected by the Arts Committee for the mural.
Councillor Elliott.
If my voice works, I would move that council approve artist number 1 for the 2025 mural project.
Moved by Councillor Elliott. Any discussion?
Just further to that, Mr. Mayor, through to Zanette. Zanette, when would this be done?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, the plan is that that mural would be started by the end of this month.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's nothing else. I will adjourn at 12:07. Thank you.